Hello. Today I'm going to read to you Chapter 3, Across the New Land. It's the third chapter from Meet Kirsten. The next day, Kirsten and her family started the long journey across the country to Minnesota. Not even Papa could guess how long the trip would take. "The agent will help us find our way and we'll see what happens," he said. At the top of the path into the park, Kirsten met Marta. "We're leaving today," Kirsten said. "Are you going too?" Marta shook her head. "Not until tomorrow," she replied. "Oh no, I was so sure we'd be traveling together," exclaimed Kirsten. "Me too," Marta answered softly. "Are you going to take another ship now, Kirsten?" "No, I think we're going to take the train," Kirsten said. "What do you think a train looks like, Marta?" "I don't know exactly. My father says it will make a loud noise and a lot of smoke. We might be afraid of trains," Marta said. Kirsten grinned. "Noise won't hurt us," she said. "And Papa says a train is like many wagons all traveling together. Maybe you'll get on our train tomorrow. Wouldn't that be lucky?" Marta caught her lower lip between her teeth. "Or maybe we won't ever see each other again," she said. Kirsten took her friend's hand. "But your family is going to Minnesota just like mine. We're sure to meet on the way. At least, I hope so," she added. "I'll miss you, Kirsten," Marta murmured. Kirsten looked down at her dusty boots. Saying goodbye to the people she loved was the hardest thing in the world to do. She didn't want Marta to see the tears that stung her eyes, so she took a deep breath before she said, "Marta, I'll tell you what my grandmother said to me when we left Sweden. More said, when you're lonely, look at the sun. Remember that we all see the same sun." "Do you do that?" Marta asked. "Do you look at the sun and think of your grandmother?" "When I miss More, I look at the sun and pray for her," Kirsten said. Now Marta managed a small smile. "Then when I miss you, I'll look at the sun. Will you do the same?" "Yes, and say a prayer." "I will. I'll say, 'God bless Marta.'" "I'll say a prayer too," Marta agreed, "and I'll be looking for you everywhere." Kirsten sighed. She was going to another new place. It seemed to her she would always feel like a Swedish girl who was far from home. Home. That's a place where you're happy, a place where you belong. How can America ever really be my home, she thought. Then she followed her parents down the path to meet the agent and 10 new families. First, there was a fierce roar and a hiss, then the long scream of a whistle. Kirsten's heart flip-flopped. Maybe Marta was right to be afraid of trains. The engine looked like a black iron house on fire. Smoke boiled up from the giant smokestack. Live sparks and red coals showered down with the smoke. Kirsten stayed close to Mama, but Mama was worried too. She squeezed Kirsten's hand extra hard as they climbed aboard. Inside, the train was so hot it felt ready to explode. There was coal grit on the floor and cinders in the air. Kirsten could hardly get her breath. She saw that the windows had been nailed shut. The agent said the train would be safer this way. Papa and Lars stood near the door. Kirsten was squeezed beside Mama and Peter on a bench under the windows. Trunks and bundles were piled up in front of them. Kirsten was used to being crowded, but now she felt as if she were packed up inside their big, painted trunk. "Aren't we there yet?" Peter complained. "Hush, we haven't even started to move," Mama said. Some of the old folks closed their eyes, and Kirsten knew they were praying that the train wouldn't catch on fire. Then it began to move. It bumped and lurched and screeched over the metal rails. Peter hid his face in Mama's lap. The men were quiet, and even Lars's eyes were wide. The train began to huff and chug. Through the small windows, Kirsten saw houses and trees moving backwards. The huffing and chugging grew louder, and the trees went by very quickly. Lars called out, "We're going faster than a horse can run. Faster than the fastest horse can run." Dizzy, Kirsten closed her eyes. The train groaned and swayed, even though she couldn't see. She felt the speed for which it carried them west. For days, the train traveled through fields and forests. When they stopped for water, a man from the railroad opened the door for a few minutes, but the air stayed hot and hard to breathe. Everyone was quiet, dazed by the heat. Now and then Mama opened the food trunk, but not even Lars was very hungry. When Kirsten caught his eye, he gave her a sad smile. She knew he hated to be trapped inside, even more than she did. At last, they reached Chicago. Chicago is in Illinois, so saying they started in New York, they're more than halfway there. I'm looking at the map over on the wall. At last, they reached Chicago. A hot, strong wind blew dirt up from the streets, but Kirsten didn't care how dirty it was. Here she could walk again and run. Papa said that it was a few days they would join a big group of pioneers traveling to the Mississippi River in wagons. So remember we looked at all the rivers on the map in class the other day? But first they would rest here in a boarding house. It was good to be in a house again, although this boarding house reminded Kirsten of their big barn in Sweden. The long, open sleeping room upstairs was like the loft where Papa stored hay, except it was filled with row after row of beds and crowded with people's belongings. In the kitchen there were big tubs for Mama to wash their clothes in. When the laundry was finished, Mama sent Kirsten and Peter out into the backyard to get some sun. Kirsten found herself on a long porch filled with children. She was used to smiling at other girls, wishing she spoke their language so that they could talk to each other. But now she heard someone calling her name. Kirsten Larson. It was Marta. Her thick braids swinging, she ran from between the rows of shirts and underwear drawing on the clothesline. She grabbed Kirsten's shoulders. Kirsten grabbed Marta's waist and they whirled and whirled. You're here, Kirsten repeated over and over. So are you, Marta answered again and again. That evening, Marta's family sat down with Kirsten's family for roast pork and potatoes. Marta's father said, We're back with our friends again. We'll stay together now until we get to Minnesota. Under the table, Kirsten and Marta held hands. Kirsten couldn't believe her good luck. At last, America was beginning to feel like home, with good food, a real bed to sleep in, and best of all, friends. So that was the end of chapter 3. It was short. You did get a picture of Kirsten and Marta seeing each other again after they've been separated. So that must have felt good because this is her only friend really in America with her, and they both speak the same language, which is something Kirsten's been having trouble with because she speaks Swedish and everybody else is speaking English. Okay, so I will see you soon for chapter 4.